There is an enormous gap between an AI agent that demos beautifully and an AI agent you can actually leave alone to do a job. The demo runs once on a clean example with someone watching and it looks like the future. The trustworthy version runs 1,000 times on inputs you did not anticipate while you are asleep, and it either does the right thing every time or tells you clearly when it could not. Closing that gap is most of the real work in building agents, and it is almost never about getting a smarter model. I run agents against my real tools every day, and I have watched them fail in just about every way an agent can fail. So let me walk through those failure modes and the specific things I do to keep an agent reliable enough to actually trust. Brukemso, litandarun sa pisti toes, minimen hedandalu, lep lifidicidir tamin meta, bifemba mimin, the failure modes honestly, because you cannot guard against what you will not admit happens. The first is wondering. You give an agent a goal and a set of tools, and instead of taking the short path, it meanders. It calls a tool it did not need, reconsiders a decision it already made, takes 3 steps to do something that needed 1. It usually gets there, but slowly and expensively, and sometimes it talks itself into a small loop. The second failure mode is using the wrong tool. The agent misreads the situation and reaches for a tool that does not fit because the descriptions were unclear or the context was ambiguous. The third is the confident mistake. The agent does something wrong while being completely sure it is right, which is the most dangerous kind because nothing about its behavior signals that anything went wrong. And the fourth, the quietest and worst, is silent partial failure. The agent does most of the job, fails on one piece, and reports success anyway, so you find out much later that a step never actually happened. Now here's the uncomfortable truth that took me a while to accept. You do not fix these by waiting for a better model. Better models wonder less and misjudge less, but they still do all of it, just less often. And less often is not the same as never. The things that actually make an agent reliable are constraints. You make the agent's world smaller and clearer until the ways it can go wrong shrink to almost nothing. Reliability is not something you get from intelligence. It is something you build by limiting how much rope the agent has. And yes, that means giving up some of the autonomy that made the agent exciting in the first place. That trade-off is almost always the correct one. The first constraint is narrow scope. An agent told to do one well-defined thing is far more reliable than an agent told to handle anything that comes up. So I do not build one big agent that does everything. I build small agents, each pointed at a narrow job, each with a tight goal. A narrow agent has fewer decisions to make, which means fewer decisions it can get wrong. When I catch myself giving an agent a sprawling mission, that is usually the sign I should split it into 2 smaller agents with clearer jobs. This one is counterintuitive because it feels like more tools means more capable. But every extra tool is another choice the agent has to make correctly and another way it can pick wrong. An agent with 3 carefully chosen tools and a clear goal is dramatically more reliable than the same agent with 20 tools and the same goal. The 20-tool agent has more ways to wander and more chances to grab the wrong one. So I give an agent the smallest set of tools that lets it finish its actual job and nothing extra just in case. Just in case is how you get a wandering agent. The third constraint is validation on the output. I never assume the agent's result is correct just because it returned one confidently. Whatever the agent produces gets checked by plain boring code before it is trusted. If the agent is supposed to return a price, the validation checks that it is a number in a sensible range. If it returns a date, the code checks it passes as a real date. If it claims to have completed 3 steps, the system verifies all 3 actually happened rather than taking the agent's word. This is the single best defense against the confident mistake and the silent partial failure. The agent does the fuzzy judgment work, and deterministic code stands behind it as the honest check. Anything that fails validation gets flagged for me rather than passed along as truth. The fourth constraint, and the most important for safety, is the confirmation gate on anything irreversible. This is my hard rule, and I do not bend it. An agent never takes an action that would be painful to undo without a human approving it first. Deleting things, sending messages to other people, spending money, publishing something public, for all of those, the agent does not just do it, it proposes the action, and I approve before it happens. the agent gets to be smart and suggest the move. I keep the final say on anything with real consequences. This one rule is what lets me give agents genuinely useful capabilities without lying awake about it, because the worst an unattended agent can do is the reversible things, and the dangerous things wait for me. The fifth constraint is full logging, and it is the one people skip until the first time an agent does something baffling. Every step an agent takes, I log. Which tool it called, what inputs it used, what came back, what it decided next. When an agent misbehaves, that log is the difference between understanding what happened and shrugging at a mystery. Without it, an agent is a black box that occasionally does something strange and you have no idea why. With it, you can replay the whole chain of decisions and see exactly where it went off the rails. That visibility is also what builds your own trust over time, because you can actually watch how the agent behaves across many runs instead of hoping. Let me say more about validation, because it is the constraint that does the most quiet work and the one people skip first. The principle is that the agent's confidence is not evidence. A language model returns every answer in the same fluent, assured tone, whether it is right or completely wrong, so the tone tells you nothing. That means you cannot use how sure it sounds as a signal, and you have to check the substance with code that does not care how confident the agent was. The practical shape of this is to define ahead of time what a valid result looks like and to reject anything that does not fit. If the agent should return one of 5 categories, accept only those 5 and flag anything else. If it should return a quantity, check it is a number in a plausible range. If it claims it finished 3 steps, go look at whether all 3 actually happened in the real world rather than trusting the claim. That last one catches the silent partial failure, which is the sneakiest failure of all, because everything looks done until you check that it actually is. The trick with validation is to make it deterministic and dumb on purpose. You do not want a second agent checking the first agent, because then you have 2 fuzzy things and no solid ground. You want plain, boring code as the final judge, code that has no opinions and no creativity, just a fixed set of checks that pass or fail. The agent brings the intelligence and the judgment. The validation brings the certainty. That pairing, a smart fuzzy step followed by a dumb certain check, is the backbone of every agent I actually trust. And it is exactly the same pattern as a scraper with a suspicious parser or a research agent with a fact check. The model proposes, deterministic code disposes. Let me put these together with a concrete shape, because in isolation they sound abstract. Take an agent that triages incoming messages for me. It is narrowly scoped. Its only job is to read a message and decide what kind of thing it is. It has a small set of tools: read the message, file it into a category, and flag it for me. It does not have a tool that can reply to anyone, because replying to a real person is exactly the kind of irreversible action that should never happen unattended. Its categorization gets validated against a fixed list of allowed categories, so it cannot invent a nonsense one, and every decision it makes is logged, so if it miscategorizes something, I can see exactly why. That agent is genuinely useful, and I can leave it running, not because the model is perfect, but because I boxed it in until the ways it could hurt me were gone. Begin. I want to be honest about what you give up because it is real. All of this constraint means the agent is less autonomous and less impressive than the open-ended version. The wide-open agent with 20 tools and a vague mission can do flashier things, and it makes a better demo. But I am not building demos. I am building things I can leave running, and the price of trust is autonomy. I would much rather have a narrow agent that does its one job reliably and asks before anything risky than a brilliant generalist that occasionally surprises me in a way I cannot undo. That is the trade, and I make it every time without regret. There is a deeper point here about where agents fit at all. A lot of the time, once you have constrained an agent down to a narrow job with few tools and validated output, you should ask yourself whether it needed to be an agent in the first place, or whether a plain script with one model call would have done it. Often the answer is the script. The agent shape earns its place only when the path genuinely has to be decided at runtime based on messy input. When that is true, all of these constraints are how you make it safe. When it is not true, the most reliable agent is the one you replaced with deterministic code. I want to add one more thing I learned the hard way about logging, because there is a difference between logging and useful logging. Early on, I logged that the agent ran and whether it finished, which felt like enough until the first time it did something strange, and my log told me nothing about why. What I actually needed was the decision trail, every tool the agent called, the inputs it passed, what came back, and what it chose to do next. With that, a misbehavior becomes a story I can read start to finish, and I can usually point at the exact step where it went wrong. Without it, I am left guessing at a black box. So the rule I settled on is to log the agent's choices, not just its outcomes, because the choices are where the failures live and the choices are what you need to fix them. It costs a little storage and it is worth more than any other piece of debugging I have. Building that trail also did something I did not expect, which is that it built my own trust over time. Watching an agent's decisions across hundreds of runs, seeing that it mostly makes sensible choices, and catching the rare odd one is what let me actually believe it was safe to leave running. You do not trust an agent because someone told you the model is good. You trust it because you watched it behave, run after run, and the log is what made watching possible. Trust in an agent is earned through visibility, and visibility is something you build, not something you are given. So the summary is simple, even if the work is not. An agent becomes trustworthy not when the model gets smarter, but when you make its world small and clear. Narrow the scope, cut the tools, validate the output, gate the irreversible actions behind your own approval, and log everything. Do that, and you can leave an agent running and actually trust the result. Skip it, and you have a clever demo that will eventually do something you cannot take back while you were not looking. If you like AI built the way it actually has to be built to survive contact with real use, real systems with the honest trade-offs left in, that is what I do here. So subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.